we so tend to not give ourselves credit or acknowledgement in our culture. There's so much focus on what is undone as opposed to what has been done. And I feel like it's such a good practice to make time to acknowledge all of the things that you did make progress on, or did evolve around, or did expand around, or did relax around, because 2025 was a hard year for a lot of people. Welcome to Cosmic Clowns, a podcast about exploring consciousness, surviving chaos, and finding the comedy in it all. I'm Jocelyn K. Glei, a queer writer, a spiritual detective, a compulsive tea drinker, and a devoted firekeeper.
And I'm Sebene Selassie, a writer and teacher, a person living with cancer, a wannabe dancer, a proud auntie, and a potato chip lover. In today's episode, we are exploring the new year. Not this new year, though we may touch into what 2026 pretends for all of us, but the question of what and when is the true new year, if there is one. We'll inquire into whether it makes sense, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, to use January 1st as a marker for fresh starts, how wintering impacts the Gregorian New Year, and how the two of us mark endings and beginnings through cycles of nature, ritual, and astrology. But first, let's check in. Jocelyn, how are you doing? I know you have a return of your very fabulous creative container, KILN, which everyone should hear about.
Yes, thank you so much for that invitation. I did want to share a little bit about KILN today. So, as you mentioned, KILN is a container for creative transformation. I originally launched it in 2024, and we've been through a few cohorts now, and it just gets juicier and more powerful every time. And this new edition of KILN is kicking off on February 10th. And it's really a space for folks who are interested in cultivating a deep connection with their creativity and or creative transformation. And that can look a lot of different ways. It could be that you have a big creative project that you want to bring into the container to help you create some accountability and really get some momentum going. It could be that you just want to reconnect to your creativity and build a regular practice around being in relationship to that part of yourself. It could be that you are currently navigating a big life or career or business transition, and you want to come in and hold space for insight or clarity to emerge around that. Or it could be that you have maybe been feeling stalled or blocked or just dormant in relation to your creativity, and you're ready to reignite and recommit to that relationship to see what might unfold. So there's a lot of different situations that might align with coming into KILN, but it's really all about coming together to create a communal support system for creative transformation. It's a 9-week program that is going to run from February 10th through April 14th, and it blends 3 different elements. And the first is co-creation sessions, so where we gather to support each other and really dropping into deep creative space. Those each start with me sharing a creative tip or a tool with the group, and then leading us in what I call a kindling meditation to help us really drop into that juicy creative space. And then we engage in parallel play as we all dive into our creative work alongside of each other. And the second core component of the program is alchemy coaching, where folks can bring me questions about what they're wrestling with creatively, and I offer advice and tips and tools on how to relax into a more easeful, generative, flowing relationship to your creativity. And the third component is creative self-reflection, where I regularly guide the group through a series of journal prompts to really explore and expand your relationship to your creativity. And there are also optional ways to drop into deeper community and find more accountability, to get feedback on your work and other things like that, if that's something that's of interest to you. So that's all the bits and pieces of the program. And I have to say that it really has proved to be quite nourishing for folks who have participated thus far. People have, I think, really been able to cultivate a new relationship to their creativity. They have been able to see their work reflected and appreciated by the community in really beautiful and inspirational ways. And they've learned how to show up for themselves and their creativity with consistency and also compassion. I really think that that myth of the lone creative genius is just that. It's a myth. And the truth is that humans are social animals, and we really thrive when we lean on community to help us show up for ourselves, and when we have a place to feel like other people are going through the same things that we're going through, and to offer support so we don't feel like we're alone. So KILN is really about creating that communal support system for creative transformation, for entering into a new relationship with your creativity, for learning how to show up for yourself in a new way, for building momentum with a big creative project. So if any of those things resonate with you, registration is now open for KILN, and the program kicks off on February 10th, as I mentioned. You can learn more on my website at jkg.co/kiln. That's jkg.co/KILN. And I'm also going to go ahead and extend my special early bird discount to podcast listeners. You can use code CreativeFire, that's one word, CreativeFire, to save 10% on registration if you book by January 7th. All right. Thank you so much for letting me share that, 7A. Thanks for listening, everyone. Maybe we can start with your check-in, Seb, and then bounce back to me. How are you feeling today? How are you showing up?
I'm good. I want to thank you for sharing that and just let people know, what a great program creator you are, because I've been in a couple of your programs and they're just always such thoughtful spaces where you put so much care into not only the construct of the space, but really the ideas that end up shaping how people are
Yeah.
together. And I always learn things and really inspired by your insights that you bring. Yeah. So just, I wasn't in KILN before, but first of all, I love the name. And I just know what a special space it must be. So thanks for offering that to folks.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
I am really good. My best friend Peter is here. He's been here since Christmas Eve, and you were here last week. So we got to share Christmas Eve together, the three of us, and spend some time together. And that's been just really sweet to, have a lot of spacious downtime of doing a lot of nothing, just eating and talking and watching things. And it's been really nourishing. I'm much more mobile than I was even like a week and a half ago. And that feels good. Have had, been able to lower my pain meds pretty significantly, which also feels good. And it's still a process. Yeah, I'm still in process of healing. So yeah, that's where I'm at. How are you
Mm.
doing?
So glad to hear you are really mending, and it was beautiful to see you and spend some holiday time with you, and just see you moving along in the healing process. I am well. I'm feeling, I'm going to say, a little proud of myself today.
Mm,
I woke up and um I was in a lot of pain, mental pain, which I create for myself this morning. And I was thinking, maybe I need to call this healer, one of my teachers who I've worked with for over a decade, but work with very, very infrequently these days. And then I kind of paused and was able to, because it felt like one of those moments where I was like, I don't know if I can kind of get myself through this. I might need some assistance. And then I paused and was like, no, this is an opportunity. And I just did a lot of writing, and that's what I've been doing lately, really using my writing practice and just a kind of automatic writing to really move energy and to
mm,
help me work through things therapeutically and shift myself into a new state. And I was able to do that this morning. I did kind of the same thing when I was staying with you last week when I woke up in not a great frame of mind. And It's so interesting because I've been a writer. I'm 48 now, since I was a teenager. And I've also been doing energy healing for about 8 years now. And I'm only just realizing that I think writing is one of my most powerful tools for
Hmm.
healing and moving energy. And it just feels really lovely to kind of be coming into that realization and to be seeing my writing practice not just as a creative practice, but as like a deeply healing, really powerful, energetic practice as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so feeling good about that
Mm.
today.
Mm.
Um, Thinking about where do we want to dive in with these New Year reflections today? And I think maybe this was your concept or idea pitch. So maybe you just want to say a little bit about kind of what you were thinking about as we were planning to do this episode and thinking about why we want to talk about this topic.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just an acknowledgement of the calendar. This episode airs January 2nd. And so for all of us as moderns, we're sort of swept into this energy of the start of the year and all that that brings, and resolutions and new routines and new year, new me's and you's. And it feels like a lot of pressure for, again, those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, a time when actually the energy of nature, and we are part of that, um, being part of nature, is much slower and much more about rest and renewal and revitalizing. And as so much of the natural world goes to sleep or dies and is reborn, to sort of have this startup energy seems rather silly, or at least misattuned. So it's something that I've thought about for a long time. And so I wanted to kind of bring that inquiry into, this space, being so close to the new year. Yeah, and for me, it's been kind of a ongoing exploration, and I would say somewhat even struggle to understand what the balance is, because we also can't just completely ignore the new year. Like, we get new calendars, we get new health insurance plans. There are things that start up with January 1st that require our care and attention. And there is some just logic to participating in the energy of the new year to a certain extent, but sort of how much do we want to give ourselves over to this as the new year? And just to say, there are many cultures that are living cultures that celebrate New Year at a different time, like Persian New Year and the astrological New Year really are about spring. And again, being Northern Hemisphere centric, but we can always then translate that, right, to the Southern Hemisphere as the opposite equinox or solstice in terms of what energy we're talking about. So there are other ways to kind of experience the new year. So in Ethiopia, the new year is in September. It's also that way for the Jewish New Year. There are different calendars all over the world that are lunar and not solar. So we have the Lunar New Year in the Chinese calendar that will come in February. And so there are all these ways to mark what is really a new cycle or a new season, not just like the seasons of our calendar, but seasons of life. And, how much do we want to sort of name this as the new year and then lock into that and really struggle with energy and with vitality because we're going against the natural cycles of life. So that's sort of the framing for this. But in terms of me, like, yes, I'm constantly like, I think I celebrate 5 New Years, throughout the year, because I do acknowledge the solstice, which is very close. So the December solstice is very close to the Gregorian New Year. And so some people like to use that return of the light, again, in the Northern Hemisphere, as like an acknowledgement of a new beginning. Some people like to, again, use spring, and I sort of acknowledge all of them: the solstices, the equinoxes, the lunar calendars, the solar calendars, as ways to maybe not fix on one point as the new year and allow myself these cycles of renewal throughout the year.
Mhm. Yeah, a classic 7A paradox embrace, like, well, it is the new year, but also it's not, right? Like
Also, like, I don't know if you know, in Buddhist typology, that Buddhism has like typology systems, and one of them is
Mm,
like the three types: um, greedy, aversive, or deluded.
mm.
So I think I'm pretty much either a greedy with a deluded rising or a deluded with a greedy rising. So I just like, I want all the systems, I want all the things, give them to me now.
I think we can all relate to greedy with diluted rising as some type
I
of
don't know. Some people are pretty aversive. So
So what does aversive mean in this in those archetypes? I guess greedy seems pretty evident as that's
aversive means
diluted.
someone who immediately, like,
So
right,
no.
says no, like has a lot of walls and
Mhm.
right. So I know a couple of those. I'm not saying they're in my family, but they might be. Me and my sister are greedy types.
More, 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 more.
More, more, more. Why not?
Why not? Why not more? Um, yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot about that, not just in terms of the new year, but in general, that kind of like really in the context of consciousness of, when other people that you're encountering are on some type of different page or in some type of different idea about whatever you're relating to, and that need to constantly kind of come back to yourself and remind yourself of what you want to be focused on and what you believe in when there's kind of all of this outside interaction or conditioning or whatnot around maybe what you should be doing, which is not necessarily in alignment with what you actually want to be doing and are doing. And what you just described about the new year feels very much like that, right? Like we're just conditioned to kind of be like, okay, like let's, set some new intentions and like get back to the gym and start eating right and all these things, and how much of that is actually aligned with our own internal systems and rhythms, as you've said. For myself, I know that I find that I'm very in alignment often with spring, in the hemisphere that I am in, and with kind of really having those new shoots of green and sort of new ideas and new initiatives coming in at that moment, or at least a kind of awakening, and kind of coming out of wintering and coming out of sloth and coming out of what I really think of as often a gestational period, so not hibernation. It's not like, oh, I'm not doing anything, but more of this quiet gestation. But at the same time, I know in my life I've launched a lot of things also in the fall, also around sometime between August, September, October. And so, as you say, there's like we're all kind of on these different rhythms. And I think it's about tuning into when those cycles of initiative and those cycles of rest and those cycles of gestation tend to flow naturally for you. And, that's also obviously something that can change, right? Um, but for me, spring always feels like a very initiatory time, much more so than January 1st, for instance.
Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, the September thing too. Like I always think like, will I be 95 years old and still be like back to school in September, because that's so conditioned in me from however many decades of schooling that it's hard not to think of September as the time to like start things like programs, because people are away in August, and so how culture becomes nature too, because we follow, sort of these rhythms. I was in New Zealand a couple of winters ago, and I was there over the Christmas holidays and New Year's, and I didn't realize that in the Southern Hemisphere, it's the end of their school year. So like kids, because it's summer, so kids are graduating from school in, right before Christmas, and then they have their big summer break. And it just felt really natural. Of course, also because the weather corresponded there, but it also was like, oh yeah, this should be the holidays, right? Like
Mm.
what we call the holidays is really their holidays. And and how much that must condition you too. So for them, they coming back to school in February is their start of their new school year, and
Mhm.
how different that is. Again, weather wise, it corresponds there, but yeah, for us, there's such like import put onto the new year of the calendar year that doesn't really match the energies, and so our energy is kind of split around the year according to what the culture dictates is time off or time to get started again.
Yeah, absolutely. And that example, I feel like points out really not quite arbitrariness of it, but as you say, like the conditioning aspect of it. And how can we really tune into ourselves and what we really need in this specific moment rather than just feeling like, okay, you have to set new intentions and you have to set big new goals. And you may or may not be motivated to do that right now. You may or may not have the energy to do that. You may or may not have the clarity to do that. And for me, one of the practices that I think is so helpful, both at the new year or any time in which I'm feeling a little bit disoriented and I really want to kind of ground into something nourishing, is to do an acknowledgments practice. So rather than focusing on, okay, what are my big new initiatives? What are my intentions? What are my goals? To instead, at the turn of the year, really look backward at the previous year and to really take the time to reflect on and acknowledge what has happened, what you have moved through, what you've accomplished. And I say accomplished third because, yes, things that you've maybe accomplished in the outer world, but to also reflect on the things that have happened in your inner world, the grief that you've moved through, the psychological victories that you've had, or the things that you've made progress on or grown around, the new maybe skills or habits that you've cultivated, the new relationships that have come into your life, the wounds that you have maybe tended to, or the um, illnesses that you have moved through and held and navigated, all of these things that we so tend to not give ourselves credit or acknowledgement in our culture. There's so much focus on what is undone as opposed to what has been done. And I feel like it's such a good practice to make time to do that, to acknowledge all of the things that you did make progress on, or did evolve around, or did expand around, or did relax around. And especially if they're more intangible, because 2025 was a hard year for a lot of people. And I think that those things that were challenging are not necessarily things that the external culture may value as an accomplishment to have moved through, but to really reflect on what those things are for you and to give yourself credit, I think is a really beautiful offering to kind of ground your energy to then think about how you want to move forward in the new year, to sort of make time to do that acknowledgments practice
How do you
first.
do it? Like, what do you do? Like, is it just
For
a
me, it's
reflection or?
yeah, it's usually like a journaling practice, and maybe over the course of a few days or a week even sometimes, because it's not like things are always going to come to mind. But I think about it, maybe in sort of like, okay, what came up in the spiritual world? Like what came up in the world of my relationships? What came up in my creative practice? What came up in my career? Kind of moving through some of these buckets and trying to think about, what those different things are, so you're not, like, just focusing on this very narrow kind of maybe, like, career accomplishment sort of bin of things, and thinking about the ways in which you've been resilient and all of that. And for me, I just, then I just kind of write them down, and it just sort of becomes an ongoing exploration maybe over a few days to really start to kind of surface those things, because it is one of those things where I think you have to kind of put your antenna up and then give them a little bit of time and space to pick things up, because you're not going to remember all of those things right at once. And you need that, sort of like with our last episode where you posed the question, kind of what moved you in 2025. And for myself, I didn't have like a list at hand. I had to really think about it. And there was a lot of richness in the practice of taking the time to reflect on those things and, taste them again, and really think about how over time, they have changed me and impacted me, and sort of kind of doing that same thing, with your own internal list and exploration, I think can be really powerful.
Mm. Yeah, I shared with you before that I did a workshop with an astrologer, Alice Sparkly Cat,
Mhm.
and they led a workshop doing that review of 2025, but through the lens of the major astrological transits that happen, which
Mhm.
I found really powerful to kind of, look at these transits, which I had been aware of at the time and sort of looked at in terms of my own chart, but then to go back and they had us use like our rising signs as the sort of frame with journaling prompts to then reflect on, okay, well, what actually did that elicit and how is that related to these other transits or other things going on, was really helpful. And I haven't focused as much on review of the year in the past, somewhat because of various, again, workshops or spaces that I'm in. But I do love having either a program or a way to do that. I also am a part of a tarot club through Substack called The Shuffle with Chelsea Pippin Mitzi, and she's had us choose. Actually, there's one happening today, right now, that I'm going to miss because of this, but I'll watch the recording of choosing your card of the year. And then throughout the year, she has us check in with that muse, that particular card, and kind of explore that. And so I was just thinking, oh, I could go back and look at those workshop because I always keep them in the same notebook and yeah, I use that as a reflecting tool. But there are probably many ways for us to reflect that use both ritual and, our various tools, mystical kind of doorways into our experiences. But one thing that it all seems to kind of be connected to is this inward turn, because this January 1st energy and really the holidays in general is so outwardly focused. And again, to attune to nature as a time to go inward and within, we've used the word wintering a couple of times, which is a term that comes from the English writer Catherine May, who wrote a book called Wintering, where she really invites us into wintering as this space of possibility. So again, this outward turning of our culture is really not the wintering of nature, which is this kind of slowing down and going in. And she's not using it just in terms of the season of winter, but that we have seasons of wintering in our lives, whether that's grief or illness or other moments where we want to go inwards. And it feels like review, as you're kind of exploring it, is an opportunity for that inward turn, but also visioning can be that inward turn. Like for years, I don't do it as much anymore, also because I'm making collages all the time. But for years, my collaging practice was the beginning of the year. And it was actually with Peter. Then we would do it virtually over the phone, actually, and send photos to each other because it was so long ago. And we would make a collage for the year. And then it turned into a New Year's collaging party because he would often visit me in New York at New Year's. And it grew from like a couple of us to a few of us. And I think the last time I held it, the floor was just full of people. And I think there were a couple of people sitting in the hallway. I lived in a very small apartment at the time, and strangers would come, and I would just make big pots of food and save all my O magazines from the year. And I had like multiple scissors and had a big bowl of glue sticks. And it was really fun to like do that inward turn as a group. And so that visioning and planning are actually contemplative practices rather than this doing productivity oriented practices of kind of how the new year is framed for us.
Yeah, and also to your point, like divinatory practices, right? Like
Mm,
bringing in tarot. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about, oh, it's so interesting. I only do tarot as a forward-looking practice primarily. Like, wouldn't it
mm.
be interesting to do a tarot about the previous year, to do a tarot reading about 2025 and see what, I kind of missed or might want to reflect on a little bit more. Um, I love that when you're talking about wintering, if you drop the W from wintering, it's entering, but like with an IN, like
Yeah,
an
yeah.
inward turning, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's a beautiful, more INs invitation, right? To turn inwards, but to also use divinatory practices as a way of reflecting, as a way of visioning, as a way of inviting in new perspectives or information that m- may not be something that you might have immediately come to on your own. You gave me beautiful gift of this new tarot deck for Christmas, which I've really been enjoying exploring. And one of the cards that I pulled when I did a reading for the new year was this card, which is the Four of Birds. See, yeah, you can see
Oh,
it.
that's the card I pulled before my surgery. I think I sent you a picture of it.
Ah,
Do you
no
remember?
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I pulled that one, which was actually reversed for me. So sort of different meaning probably than for you. But I just wanted to read this paragraph from the book about it. So this is the tarot deck, the Shining Tribe Tarot, which is created by Rachel Pollock. And maybe you could say a little bit more about her in a moment if you want to. But she says for this card, the Four of Birds, many of us work diligently for growth, self knowledge, inspiration, or enlightenment. These things, however, do not come from determination. We cannot command a vision to appear to us. Often, such hard work may mask a fear of the emotions that will come if we let ourselves relax. We tell ourselves we want change or wisdom, but we try to control what happens. And so the card promises truth and healing in those moments where we stop struggling. And I thought that that reflection was such a good kind of pushback on this sort of like new year, new you energy and this
Hmm.
idea of being so determined, right? And so determinative and really trying to control in that way sort of what might happen. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's great to have intentions and it's great to have goals, but also as sort of a devil's advocate perspective, I found this really refreshing, this idea of, this constant striving for self-knowledge and inspiration and enlightenment, not something that I relate to at all. No striving happening over here. And there's so much that can come from relaxing around that and from resting and seeing what comes in. So I thought that was a nice just kind of counterpoint as we think about this new year, new you energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, as it relates to the energy of the holidays, which are just butt up against this, that there's almost a way in which people just fall into line with the momentum that it's really hard to even see it because you're just so
Yeah.
used to it, the energy of like Christmas shopping and gifts and travel and family dynamics, and it's so relentless for so many people. I think that I've actually been saved from some of that because I'm an immigrant, and like a lot of it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not our Christmas. It's, our Christmas is January 7th. Like there are many factors to it that are give me an out. And for years I celebrated sort of immigrant queerdo Thanksgiving and Christmas with friends who aren't from here, and so just aren't caught up in that. But I have a friend who many years ago now suffered an incident with her heart around Christmas, and between Christmas and New Year's, and her doctor told her she had what's called holiday heart. And holiday heart like sounds like it should be something sweet that involves like Santa Claus and
Yeah.
magic, but it's not. It's like dun dun, like the most heart attack deaths happen Christmas, and the second most New Year's. And just the heaviness of that truth that this is what this season does to us, because we are going so hard against nature. And again, for a lot of us, we want to slow down, but the sense of obligation to attend all the holiday parties, or, get the end of year report done for work, or whatever it might be, really is hard to go against the stream of. You really have to sort of hurt some feelings, opt out, maybe not travel, and disappoint some folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so much of that is also just stress of relationships and family as well, right? And
Oh yeah,
it's
holiday
interesting.
heart 100% is about family
And also, but
and
it
the booze and fat.
yeah. And the stress and the work stress and all the
Yeah.
things, right? Like sometimes you take a vacation and you're almost like, I remember having this feeling when I was working at a startup, like, oh my God, taking this vacation isn't even worth it because the preparation to take the vacation is so strenuous
Mm-hmm.
that I almost don't even want to take a vacation, which is so messed up. Um, but the other side is you and I were talking about too, right? Like there's also so many things like that that happen with daylight savings time as well, like car crashes and other, stress induced things that happen. And again, it's because humans are like, futzing with the natural rhythms, right? We're not in alignment with the rhythms that are happening. And we, make a sort of like a, record stop, like, and then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden there's all of these consequences and people, quite literally get hurt or get injured or get killed because we're kind of messing with the natural rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, yeah, I mean, just such a call to us to really tune into that more and to, um, you know, do that inward turn so we can align to what feels natural for us as much as we can. The other thing your comments were making me think of is just, the idea of like this sort of commodification and this focus on consumerism that happens in the holiday times. I was at CVS this morning and I was like walking down an aisle and I just out of the corner of my eye, I noticed I was like walking through the section with like ladies' razors in it. And there was literally a chic razor that was called Intuition. And I was like, I literally took a photograph of it because I was like, this is like peak commodification of, spiritual or creative
What are
realization.
you
Like,
intuiting that your hair is growing? Like, if you need intuition to understand that your hair is growing, I think you have more problems than a lady razor.
Like I was just like, okay, this is a bridge too far, chic. Okay, like intuition, get out of here.
I'm intuiting that I
So
have
I'm gonna get one and
stubble
just
on my leg.
yeah, incorporate that into my divinatory practices. I'll have my
Yeah,
my tarot and then my razor there.
that's weird.
So silly.
Hmm. Yeah, I've been thinking, just in terms of like, okay, well, how do I want to kind of approach this new year? Because last new year I was just out of the hospital and,
Mhm.
barely able to stand and walk. So there was no New Year planning happening. Like I was just like,
Yeah.
am I going to get through at all?
Yeah.
Um, and, in a very different place, obviously recovering from surgery and about to have another one in about a month, but um, able to kind of plan for a year in a different way. And it's like, well, what is planning for the year? So I got a wall calendar. I had a wall calendar in 2023 that I really enjoyed so that I could like see the year and kind of because events and things are planned so far in advance for me, like see what was happening without the pressure to like fill it up. And last year I was like, yeah, I don't need I had ordered a wall calendar. I ended up not using it at all because that was not the kind of year I was having. But this year I decided to get one again. And I've really been I haven't put it up yet. And I'm kind of contemplating, well, how do I want to approach it this year? Like, do I want to bring in ritual to it? Do I want to bring divinatory practices into the calendar itself? Like, besides putting up the events that I know are already planned for March and April and June and October or whenever they are, do I also want to have some other elements into it that do help me attune to these natural cycles and, write in the equinoxes and the solstices and maybe certain transits that are particularly important for me this year. And yeah, make it something that really honors the spirit of the conversation we're having.
Yeah, and I think there's also the factor of just the tiny factor of our external world, right? That just like massive uncertainty and instability that we're all feeling and navigating, and that is continuing to unfold and certainly doesn't really seem like it's going to slow down any in the new year. And how does that affect our ability and our willingness to plan? I don't know if you wanna say anything about you and I have been talking about the big kind of astrological reset that is coming up in late February, and we've kind of been thinking about planning or not planning around that. I don't know if there's anything you wanna kinda say about that.
Well, yeah, just for folks who aren't aware of it, there is an astrological transit happening, as you said, around February 20th. And um, just briefly, Neptune and Saturn planets are coming together. So they'll be in the same spot in the sky at 0 degrees Aries. And astrology is basically pattern spotting. Like it's for thousands of years since ancient Mesopotamia, it's been recorded, but it probably was happening before that then as well. Just seeing things in the sky and noticing what it corresponded to here on Earth. So the Hermetic saying, "As above, so below." So it's not saying that the planets are causing it. It's just acknowledging that, like with reading tea leaves or tarot or seeing any correspondences in nature, that basically everything is a mirror of itself because everything is interconnected. And so to the planets and the stars. And this transit, this particular conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at this particular degree, which is the beginning of the zodiac, 0 degrees Aries, has never been seen in recorded history. We know it's happened because using an ephemeris, we can look back or, plug it into a computer. We know that it happened, I think, something like 7,000 years ago, but it wasn't recorded to what it related to and hasn't happened since. So we're all wondering what the hell it's going to be. Is it aliens? Is it, nuclear weapons? Is it um, a global awakening? Is it a natural disaster? Like no one knows, and everyone, and by everyone I mean all astrologers and astrological kiddos like us, are very curious what it might portend. So yeah, it's very in line with, everything since basically the pandemic has been haywire. And it's reaching some point, not that that's an ending, could be a catalyst and a beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm, excited and a little bit, trepidatious to
Mm,
see what unfolds, but I think that's, my general feeling about just the external the external world
mm,
right now, there's, It feels like so much possibility, all of the things that we were talking about in our last episode, what moved us, what inspired us, and at the same time, so much uncertainty and just thinking about how to navigate that and how to plan and how to set intentions and be with all of that at the same
Mhm.
time. It's
Mhm.
complicated stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that having practices that, again, not just because I'm a greedy type, but because we need different tools for sort of the different rhythms that are happening around us. So not like sort of hedging all our bets on January 1st being our one and only chance to kind of go inwards or explore, but with every new moon and every lunar cycle, with the different cycles of the year and of nature, we have opportunities to kind of reconnect and revisit and renew. And yeah, well, I think we're going to be needing that more and more.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about the idea of experimentation, which is really came in for me super strongly at the beginning of the pandemic. That felt like just within my career, a very like experimental time for me. And I think again, with all of this uncertainty, it's for me feeling like having a very experimental attitude towards things somehow feels like a good fit, to not be
Mm,
like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this project for a very long time, and it's definitely gonna unfold like this," but to really try to hold things more lightly. I mean, always a good practice in life, but also to just frame things a little more experimentally and a little more lightly for myself. You were talking about how you have, or at least this year, are kind of picking a word of the year, which has been a practice that my girlfriend uses and has used for many years. And I was thinking about what would mine be, and I wonder. I'm still sitting with it, but experimentation might be the word for me this year. Do you want to share what you've
beautiful.
what you've picked?
Yeah, so it's something I've done for many years now, and this year it's balance. And it's really sort of not just in a kind of mundane materialist way, but really living into the Tao of balance, like as in the Tao De Jing, and this balance being an expression of the true nature of reality, that it's and that it's not sort of a static thing, but balancing and is always moving and dynamic, and um, is always an invitation into like the truth of life. So yeah, that feels very rich for me right now. And as I like relearn to walk, and will be doing so again, it also feels very material as well, like really real in my body. And so, um, yeah, it feels like a good word.
Yeah, I love balance as a reminder that things are not static and a state of balance is never
Hmm.
static. Many, many, many moons ago when I was a gymnast, balance beam was my favorite
Yeah.
apparatus, and
Mm.
it is a very challenging apparatus for exactly that reason,
Mhm.
right? You're just constant micro adjustments to maintain your balance, and I think that's such a good, in our culture, we use words like work life balance as if you're going to arrive at some plateau of,
Mhm.
work life balance. And then you're there and then you're done. You can like move on to
Mhm.
focusing on other things. But
Mhm.
of course, it's a never ending project. I'm curious how you said you've done this for many years. How do you kind of carry those words through the year with you? And like, how does that come up for you as kind of a practice of thinking about it and holding
Well,
it throughout the
like,
year?
even with these wall calendars, it's always at the top of the calendar, and sort of
Yeah.
like write it in big letters, or it goes in the front of whatever journal I start, or if I have a planner. And so it's always there as a reminder. And then, I might fit it into various journaling practices or divinatory practices, like you're saying. So, might post it up on my computer, like wherever it needs to be, so that I remember that that's my intention for the year. And interestingly enough, I didn't have one for this year because, again, this year was sort of rough.
Yeah, just sometimes you're just rolling with it, not really
We've been
setting an
talking about
intention.
this. I'm really wondering because, as we've said, last year's The Astrology Podcast, year ahead,
No, don't do it. All right, tell them.
Chris Brennan and Austin Coppock, who are very trustworthy astrologers, described 2025 as the pilot episode for the series we will begin in 2026.
So if that's not clear for everyone, it's like 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029. Those are the episodes.
Yeah.
Following the pilot of 2025.
It's like, if the goal in general is a 7-year or 7
episode season
show, 7 seasons, that's the goal, right? Because that's when you get residuals. Maybe now that residuals don't exist really anymore, that's a broadcast television antiquity. Maybe it'll be a shorter, like, seasons.
Well, I mean, as I implied in my text to you the other day, because I've been listening to Jeff Hiller's book, which you recommended to me, Actress of a Certain Age, new memoir by Jeff Hiller, who, if that name doesn't ring a bell, plays the queer best friend on Somebody Somewhere
yeah.
on HBO. He's so amazing, such an incredible actor and very funny. I'm listening to the audiobook, which you recommended to me. And he goes into a whole extended explanation about like pilot episodes and some other like lower form of pilot that he describes. But anyway, he reminded me that the pilot doesn't always get picked up.
Right. Yes.
Sometimes
the
there's
universe
just the
is
pilot
be like,
episode.
This show is stank.
Yeah. So hopefully those producers up in the sky are like,
no.
we don't want to pick this up. Give us some new, and maybe we'll just generate some new pilots in 2026.
Dystopian political dramas not working anymore. We're gonna go into
tired,
really romantic love stories with fairies and sprinkles of rainbows and sparkles.
Yeah, utopian rainbow society pilot or something.
Yeah.
Utopian consciousness.
Yeah, where's that show?
I mean, but that's right. We have to be able to imagine that show.
Yes.
And it's like we're getting so many of these delusions, right? And so much of this bad news that I was talking about this with a friend who's a filmmaker the other day, we all know, of course, the consistency of the apocalyptic visions and how challenging it is just to imagine something completely different. Because again, we've been fed that's part of our conditioning too.
Well, okay, this is a bit of an aside from this topic, but related. You and I last week watched The History of Sound, which is a historical drama with Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor, both my husbands. And it's a fucking tragic gay love story, as I was calling it, Folkback Mountain, because they're folk singers. Like we needed another one of those. And, that's our inability to imagine something beautiful and new and to go back. Like, it wasn't documentary. It wasn't a true story. Someone imagined up another gay tragedy. And in contrast to our Canadian hockey gay love story.
This is what me and Sebene did over the holidays. We watched queer love stories with characters with great butts.
Yes. So heated rivalry. A Canadian-produced TV show about 2 hockey players that fall in love, contemporary. Amazing.
Oh my God. So sweet.
So good.
And
so maybe that's
quite
what
charged.
We need to watch for 2026. We need to imagine better stories for ourselves.
Yeah, new stories and stories
Yeah,
where love succeeds, right?
right.
Like love conquers all, and not in just these boring romantic arcs that we see all the time, which those are sweet and lovely, but like love conquers all in a much
Mhm,
broader context, right? Like within
mhm,
the collective. And it's not just this hate, fear, anxiety fueled narratives. Like what
mhm,
does it look like to imagine a future where love is centered? Ugh,
mhm.
what would
Yeah, and
that feel like?
if it involves cute Canadian hockey butts, even
We're on
better.
board. Oh my goodness. Well, any other kind of final reflections on new year, new you, pushing back, different ways of imagining your way into the new year?
Hmm. Yeah, I just hope people find, what's right for them. I used to work with this guy who was of Hungarian descent, but grew up here, and he friggin' hated summer and he loved winter. He barely wore any clothing, from my perspective, like a little tiny jacket, no hat, no scarf. And but he was so energized by this time of year. And so to that inward turn is also listening to what makes sense for us, right? Like what really invigorates us and what we need. And there's so much of uh, really sometimes having to go against what the culture says is the correct response to something. And tuning in to nature really is tuning into ourselves, right?
Yeah, I think about it as honoring your idiosyncrasies, right? Like
Mm,
we think of idiosyncrasies as kind of weird or quirky or maybe like not so good, but I like the idea of just really leaning into that and leaning into your weird, strange, idiosyncratic way as the best way to do it, you know?
yeah.
And
Well, we think of weird and quirky as bad, right?
mm.
And so, like, yeah,
Not
every
us.
everyone, mm-mm.
Not these clowns.
um, everyone to lean into being their true selves. And we've come back to this a couple of times in this podcast, like how astrology and these
Mm.
systems that allow us to see ourselves more clearly as individuals with these really unique influences and perspectives and expressions, and how that um, uniqueness is our gift. And uh, I've been following this Jungian teacher, Satya Doyle Boyack, I think her name is. I'm doing a year-long course with her starting this year, and she's been talking a lot about individualism and how we've sort of overcorrected in our kind of critique of the way modernity has really twisted individualism, right?
Mm.
Into this isolation and competition and um, hoarding and all of these negatives of individualism. But there's a beauty to individualism and individuation that Jung points to that I think is also part of that. Really understanding what is right for us, and maybe the new year for you is the beginning of summer.
Yeah, and I love that. I've been thinking about that in terms of style and like this, we all work on our computers and, we have these, we download like this, one big OS update or something. And there's kind of like, we look, especially when we think about like productivity for these operating systems, right? And there's very much this kind of like one size fits all type of approach to it, but that so just denudes everything of style, right? And so
Mm,
just really thinking about this idea of what's my style, in the same way that you
mm,
might think about it for how you dress or how you adorn yourself in the morning, like what's my style of approaching winter? Like, what's my style of approaching my creative practice and really like embracing that in all of its
mm,
fullness as this like cool, beautiful, wonderful, unique expression. Like, I feel
mm,
like there's been such a loss of style in this kind of
mm.
standardization of like an OS, an Airbnb, a coffee shop, and it's just like, ugh, like, get rid of that. Like, let's bring
Mm,
back, just, like, wild personal style.
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a good place to end, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks everyone for showing up for us again for this episode, for your attention, for your presence. We are going to take a little break after this inaugural season of 6 episodes, and we will be back with a new episode for you on February 13th. In the meantime, if you would like to stay in touch with us, we are both on Substack. You can find 7A's newsletter under the name Remind Me to Love. It is an absolutely beautiful newsletter that follows the moonly cycles, is one of my mostest favorite reads when I see it in my inbox. Always something very beautiful and nourishing and wise in there. And you can find me under my newsletter named Radiate on Substack. And you can also find more information about KILN, which I talked about at the top at my personal website, jkg.co/KILN, KILN. And we would also love to extend an invitation to you to rate or to review this podcast if you've been enjoying it. It helps new listeners discover us. It helps us know what you're thinking. It helps keeps us going. And yeah, so thank you so much for being here. We would love to have you invite more cosmicness, more clownness, more comedy into the new year in 2026. And as mentioned, we will see you again here on February 13th. We'll leave you with this final moment of clown. I don't mind. I don't want it to be like, my head is so giant.
That's what we call you behind your back, big head Jocelyn.
Big head Jocelyn,
Here
thinking
she
she's
comes.
so great again. Can't believe she hasn't toppled over yet.
That seems pretty good. I mean, your face is bigger, but it's just because you're closer to the screen.